1942, that's when I joined the Army. You had to have basic training first, and that was in Brockville. That's when you learned do all the basics. I guess that's basically what we did, just marching and training how to fire your weapon. After you finished that training, you went to your training for your part of the Army you were going to serve in. Mine was signal officer, and that was in Kingston. I wore glasses, but the Signal Corps didn't care if I wore glasses. Yeah, you emerged from that training as a lieutenant signal officer. The doctor looked at me and said, "You're wearing glasses. We can't send you on the draft to England. You can do administrative work in Ottawa." Well, as a signal officer, you got to think of communications. So there are two ways to communicate. If you're on the move, you communicate by radio, and if you're stuck somewhere, you will communicate using telephones. Before I was taken to Europe, they asked me to, they didn't ask me, they told me to be aboard this trained group of troops, which we had conscription in Canada at that time, but it was only for our service in Canada. So I took the troops in the train and took them to British Columbia, where they went to British Columbia because of Pearl Harbor. They were getting ready for a Japanese attack on Canada, or they felt it might happen. One of the things in the book was they shouldn't be playing cards for money. And I walked through the coach, and these guys were playing cards and for money. And I said, I don't want to stop you from playing cards for money, but I don't want to see any money on the table. So I really don't know that you're playing for money. So that's the way we figured that worked. My father was with the Bank of Commerce. My father and mother lived in Winnipeg. So on my way back to Kingston or someplace, anyway, I thought I will stay with my father and mother for a few days. And I asked my brother, I guess I must have asked him. So he said, okay, I'll get you a date. And he phoned Irene and arranged a date. Irene thought she had a date with my brother. And she said to her mother, I'm not going out with Bob's brother. And her mother said, well, maybe you'll meet your fate. And that's what happened. I was only home a few weeks and I got married. Yeah, Irene, my wife Irene, was 98 before she died. When the actual fighting started, and I can't remember the exact date, but anyway, they were glad to have me to take place of the casualties that were coming in. You would be okay. You could be okay with your glasses. I got there in April 44, but D-Day wasn't till June 44. The British 6th Airborne Division had dropped at D-Day at night, September 44, and they were brought back to England to refit, and they needed a signal officer. So I volunteered. So the 6th Airborne Division was asked to go to Brussels and take up a position to try to back up the American Army while the Germans were struggling to make progress. After the Germans were stopped in the Battle of the Bulge and retired back into Germany, there was no reason for us to be there, so we were brought back to England. You dropped from the plane that was carrying you, and to try to make it realistic, officers, I guess, would come up and say, "You're being fired at by the enemy. What are you going to do now?" And you had to think what you would do if it was real bullets being fired at you. I just lay down tighter to the ground. Well, as an officer, I had a revolver. I carried a submachine gun. The landing zone was on the other side of the Rhine River. These airborne operations, you're not very high up. They don't want you coming down too long because you're easy targets. When you're starting to get close to where you're going to drop, we're all standing up. When that light turns green, that's when you went out. Bang. And you just all got out as fast as possible. The pilot was concentrating on not getting shot down. Our particular aircraft didn't hit the drop zone. So I landed up in a tree in a forest when I heard footsteps chomping through the woods. And I figured that's going to be the enemy. I better get my revolver out so I can stop them. Anyway, it turned out to be guys of our own unit, our own aircraft. So I got down and nobody knew where they were. Here's where we are on the map, and this is the way we have to go to the drop zone where everybody else is. I was in the 9th Battalion of the 3rd Brigade, and you're there to protect the landing of the other troops that are coming across the Rhine River in boats then. They didn't have a bridge. So that was the drop over the Rhine. After they got all the troops across, moving east, and we started to go across Germany. The German army at that point had been fighting the Russians, and we were getting beaten by the Russians, and that made it a lot easier for the Allies. After moving east into Germany, we didn't really have to do much in the way of fighting because the German army was retreating, what was left of it. And we'd only been in this town situated on the Baltic, Wismar, I think it was called. And the Russians army had arrived, but they were too late. We had the town on May 8, 1945. The war was over. Before that happened, the Russians that were in front of us pulled back 1,000 yards and set up artillery facing us. They immediately became not enemies, they were communists. Our division were taken back to England. They have decided to move the division to Palestine because the British had peacekeepers in Palestine. So they wanted to sell the 6th Airborne Division to go to Palestine and try to keep peace. But I wanted to go home because I wanted to go home and get out of the army and get a job and get married. It must have been coming home in the winter. The Ile de France, it's an ocean liner. The whole ship got seasick. I wanted to get outside on the deck, so I ran out and got on the side of the deck and threw up, but the wind was blowing into my face, and it all came back into my face. I didn't get home till February 1946. The war had been over since May 45. I'm 104. This all happened over 70 years ago, you know.